Imagine entering a luxurious room, illuminated by torches, where tables are filled with extravagant dishes, wine is poured endlessly, and conversations revolve around politics, military conquests, and elite scandals. But there's something curious about this scene. No one is sitting. Instead, the guests are lying down, reclining on couches and resting on one elbow while eating with relaxed gestures. It may seem strange today, but for the Romans, this was the proper way to enjoy a meal. Eating while reclining was a symbol of status, power, and tradition. But why did they do it? Was it merely an eccentricity of the elite? Or was there a deeper reason behind this custom? To understand this practice, we need to dive into the heart of Roman society, into its grand feasts and rituals that shaped an empire. So get ready, because what you are about to discover might completely change the way you see the habits of the Romans. But where did this peculiar practice originate? Like many of Rome's sophisticated customs, the inspiration came from the Greeks. Long before the Romans dominated the world, the Greeks had already developed the habit of reclining while eating, especially during their famous symposia, social gatherings where philosophy, wine, and food blended into an experience that went beyond mere nourishment. For the Greeks, reclining while dining was a symbol of civilization and refinement, something that distinguished free men from barbarians who ate in a crude and disorganized manner. When Rome began absorbing Greek culture, this custom was adopted and elevated to the ultimate symbol of status. But there was a clear rule. Not everyone had the right to dine while reclining. This privilege was reserved exclusively for the Roman elite, patricians, senators, and wealthy citizens. Eating while lying down was not just a matter of comfort. It was a political and social act, a visible demonstration of power. While nobles and the rich reclined on their luxurious triclinia, surrounded by sculptures, mosaics, and exquisite tapestries, the lower classes lived a very different reality. Plebeians, merchants, and workers ate sitting on simple benches or standing, often on the streets or in small taverns. As for slaves, they didn't even have that privilege. They ate quickly, practically, always at their master's disposal. This detail may seem minor, but in ancient Rome, the way you ate said a lot about your place in society. Reclining to eat was a ritual of domination, a visual assertion that these men had the time, power, and wealth to enjoy their banquets at leisure, while others could only watch. If you imagine Roman banquets as mere gatherings to eat and drink, you're mistaken. These events were grand social spectacles, where politics, alliances, and ostentation blended into a scene of luxury and excess. The triclinium, the famous banquet hall, was the center of this ritual. Here, guests were immersed in a carefully orchestrated experience. Food, wine, music, and entertainment came together in an event where every detail had a purpose: to impress, seduce, and consolidate power. At the center of the room was a low table where dishes and wine cups were arranged. Surrounding this table were the lecti, specially designed couches that allowed guests to recline while eating. These couches were luxurious, covered with soft cushions and fine fabrics, and strategically placed to encourage conversation and interaction among the guests. Each lectus accommodated 3 people who lay on the cushions, supported on their left elbow, leaving their right hand free to grab food and drink wine. This detail was not accidental. The position was considered elegant and appropriate for banquets, allowing guests to converse effortlessly while enjoying the meal. But who sat where? In a Roman banquet, seating arrangements were not random. On the contrary, they were carefully planned according to the importance of each person. Typically, the host occupied the most prestigious position, ensuring they were visible to everyone. The most important guests were placed close to the host, while those of lower status sat farther away. In a traditional triclinium, there was space for 9 guests, distributed across 3 couches. This number could vary in smaller banquets or more luxurious halls, but the general rule remained. The seating arrangement reflected each person's social position within the Roman hierarchy. Behind the luxury and ostentation of Roman banquets, there was an invisible group that made it all possible: the slaves. While the guests reclined on their couches, surrounded by extravagant dishes and overflowing cups of wine, a legion of servants worked tirelessly to ensure that every detail of the dinner was flawless. The slaves were responsible for bringing the dishes directly from the kitchen, ensuring that the food was always hot and well presented. But their role went far beyond merely serving. In many cases, they were trained to anticipate the guests' desires, refilling cups before they emptied, adjusting cushions for greater comfort, and even discreetly cleaning up the excesses of the banquet. And it wasn't just the kitchen slaves who participated in these events. Entertainment was also essential for a grand Roman dinner, and for this, specialized servants existed. Musicians, dancers, and even acrobats were brought in to entertain the guests as they ate and conversed. Some slaves were trained to play instruments like the lyre and the cithara, creating a soundtrack that made the experience even more refined. Others performed exotic dances, often originating from regions conquered by Rome, adding a touch of mystery and fascination to the event. Having talented slaves was a sign of status, and the most ambitious hosts competed with each other to offer the most impressive performances. Some even went so far as to showcase their own private gladiators or stage small theatrical plays, all to ensure their banquets were unforgettable. Moreover, who you invited to your banquet was just as important as what was served. Senators, generals, philosophers, and poets were often called to these gatherings. Roman dinners were a political arena where alliances were formed and crucial decisions were made between sips of wine and bites of exotic meat. But, of course, not all banquets were noble and philosophical. Some were marked by unbelievable excesses that defied any notion of moderation. Eating and drinking without limits was a sign of wealth and power, and many hosts prided themselves on serving absurd quantities of food. The goal? To show that they were rich enough to waste. And this brings us to one of the most shocking aspects of these feasts: intentional vomiting. Yes, many Romans took abundance so seriously that, in order to keep eating, they would vomit on purpose. This practice was common at high society parties and was even mentioned by historians such as Suetonius and Seneca, who described how some guests would get up, purge their excesses, and return to the table as if nothing had happened. It was a grotesque display of extravagance, but one that reflected the mindset of the Roman elite. Pleasure had no limits, and abundance needed to be displayed without restraint. This obsession with luxury and excess went beyond mere ostentation. For the Romans, even the most extravagant customs needed some form of justification, whether cultural, social, or even scientific. For many, there was also a medical justification for this practice. Pliny the Elder, one of the greatest scholars of ancient Rome, claimed that reclining while eating aided digestion and improved blood circulation. According to this theory, the inclined position allowed food to descend more slowly through the digestive tract, reducing the risk of indigestion and enabling more efficient nutrient absorption. For the Romans, who frequently consumed heavy and fatty meals, this idea seemed to make sense. Being relaxed, without the compression that occurs when eating while seated, was seen as a physiological benefit. But this custom wasn't just about health. Roman banquets also had deep religious significance. In various festivals and celebrations, reclining while eating was a ritualistic act that connected participants to the gods and ancestral traditions. Among these celebrations, Saturnalia was one of the most important. Held in December, this festival was a time of social inversion, where slaves and masters swapped roles, rules were suspended, and people indulged in a week of excess, banquets, and unrestrained festivities. During Saturnalia, The act of reclining while eating symbolized communion among all social classes, a rare occasion when the luxury of the patricians extended to plebeians and even slaves. Thus, Roman banquets were much more than mere meals. They were arenas of power, stages for intrigue, and public displays of status. For the guests, a place in the triclinium was a social statement, an opportunity to be among the most influential figures in the city. Receiving an invitation to one of these events was a mark of prestige. Being present meant that you were part of the elite, that your name carried weight in the decisions shaping Rome. Politicians forged alliances over glasses of wine, generals planned military campaigns between bites of exotic meat, and philosophers debated the deepest questions of existence while savoring honey-covered fruits. But while these banquets symbolized grandeur, they also exposed the decline of Roman morality. The unrestrained luxury, limitless excesses, and empty ostentation were, according to many historians, a reflection of the empire's decadence. Even Seneca criticized this obsession with pleasure, warning that while Rome indulged in its endless feasts, its enemies were sharpening their swords. As the centuries passed, the practice of reclining while eating disappeared. Christianity brought new values and Roman culture evolved. The dining table replaced the triclinium, moderation took the place of excess, and dinner ceased to be a spectacle of ostentation. But now I want to hear your opinion. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to attend a Roman banquet? Do you think eating while lying down would be comfortable or just strange? Leave your opinion in the comments and share your thoughts on this ancient tradition. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more curiosities about the Roman world. Click on the video on the screen to discover 5 incredible ancient Roman inventions that you wouldn't believe existed. See you in the next video.